How to make Geo go Ultra Instinct against the Hydra. What is going on, Raiders? Soda Dragon here, and today I'm showing you how to maximize using Geo against the Hydra. Now I know it's really popular to use Geo for the Hydra, and for good reason, but today we're going to learn how to squeeze every last bit of utility and damage out of him. But firstly, I think there's an issue we should talk about, the elephant in the room that is, and it is whether or not Geo is endgame worthy, that is in the Hydra. Meaning, is he only good in normal and hard, or can he be used in brutal and nightmare? In my opinion, Geo is best served for normal and maybe hard difficulty. But once we're talking brutal and nightmare, to get damage, you're going to need those enemy max HP champs. So that is something to consider. If you're on normal and you want to work your way up to nightmare, do you start off with Geo, whereas maybe his utility might fall off in the harder difficulties? Or do you just start on normal and just work your way up with those enemy max HP champs like Roll Guard and Husk? That's up for you guys to decide. Anyways, on to maximizing Geo for the Hydra. So really quick, for those of you who don't know, why do people use Geo against the Hydra? Well, he has this really cool passive that redirects a percentage of the damage that the team takes back onto an enemy that has an HP burn debuff placed by Geo here. Now Geo has to place that HP burn, and he only places single target HP burns. Plus, the HP burn that he places cannot be spread by another champion. So you can't use Vizier and spread that HP burn to everybody. Then it's going to count as Vizier's HP burn and not as Geo's. So Geo himself does have a single target HP burn. But once he places that on somebody and incoming damage hits the team, a percentage of that is going to go back to anybody that has that HP burn placed on them. What does this mean? Big reflected damage on those Hydra heads. So here is a quick screenshot of some of the damage I did with my Geo team, which I'll show you in a second. Notice 16 million on normal. I only have normal available, but I think this team can do a 1 or 2 key 4 hard, depending on the gear you have. And I'm going to show you my gear. The stats aren't anything crazy, just honestly. My gear is not that great. So you guys, if you're able to replicate the gear or do better with the gear, should be able to get bigger damage numbers than here. So, as you guys might have noticed in the screenshot, here is my team. So firstly, I'm going to talk about how this team maximizes Geo, then I'll get to every other person's individual contributions to the team. So the good thing with using Geo for this rotation is against the Head of Decay and that Poison Cloud. That Poison Cloud prevents normal attacks with debuffs from placing the debuffs because those attacks are turned into weak hits. And weak hits normally do not place debuffs. So Geo and also Mordecai, they can place HP burn without hitting. So they're not doing any damage, they're just placing that, which is great because it means you cannot weak hit. So even if everyone has poison clouds up, Geo can still put up that HP burn to get that reflected damage back onto the Hydra heads. But Geo only places single target HP burns. So what are some things we can do about that? So Geo's burn is for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. So how can we maximize getting those burns out? They're only single target and they cannot be spread. So the first thing we're going to do is use Relentless. So that Relentless set proccing and giving us extra turns is huge because every time he gets an extra turn, all his cooldowns are reduced. If you don't have good Relentless gear, it's okay. Another good option would be Reflex, but I do think Relentless is the better of the two. Because in this rotation, we do have the Head of Torment, we can utilize as our second strategy to maximize Geo, a turn meter boosting strategy. That is why we have Shamail in the team. Because the Head of Torment is there, and if we target it with Shamail on the team, the leader, which is Geo right now, is going to get turn meter boosted. So Geo is going to get a lot of turn meter increases every time somebody hits that Head of Torment. The third strategy, as you guys see here, another Geo. Once again, we cannot spread that HP burn. It's only single target at a time. So what is better than another Geo to spread another single target HP burn? So all the tricks still apply to the second Geo. Firstly, that Relentless. So we are going Relentless on the second Geo as well. As I mentioned, Reflex is another good option, but notice the position of the second Geo. The second Geo is in the second position. So what happens when the first Geo gets swallowed or dies, whatever? Now the second Geo starts to get that turn meter boost, right? Because of Shamail. Shamail will turn meter boost first, second, third in order. So we got Geo in the second slot. So another Geo is going to get turn meter boosted and get those burns out. Hopefully get that first Geo out of whatever head swallowed him. A fourth strategy would be to utilize a champ that reduces cooldowns. So somebody like Painkeeper or Kaimar. So obviously with less cooldowns than the Geos or your Geo can throw those burns out a lot more often. So that is another option. In this particular comp here, you could probably replace Abyssal if you wanted to for a Painkeeper to really maximize the damage. And lastly, you can use a debuff extender with Geomancer's burns. So even with an extended debuff, it would still count as Geomancers, though once again, you cannot spread that debuff. But simply extending it, that is increasing the turn amount, that will still count as Geomancers. So if you guys wanted to add 4 and 5 to your comp, that is that debuff extension and cooldown reduction, then yes, you could potentially do a lot more damage than I did. So let's talk about what the other members of the team do, and then you guys can figure out if you have replacements for them. So Scylla Drakes, all she is there to do is heal and revive. That's pretty much it. So Padma here does play some very important roles. Firstly, she has the AoE attack down on her A1. Now, some of you guys might be saying, don't we want the heads to hit harder so that reflected damage is greater? That is, that damage we reflect back to the heads with HP burn. Technically, yes, but I mean, they do a lot of damage, so it's up to you. If you have great gear, you know, and really tanky champs, high HP, sure, maybe you don't need a decreased attack for the Head of Wrath. But me personally, I like to have that. That's a good balance between sustainability and doing enough reflected damage back onto the Hydra heads. So that is her primary role on the team, that AoE decreased attack, but you could replace her with another decreased attack champ. So somebody like Stag Knight or Maneater, those would be good options. But what else does she do for the team? She also has an AoE decreased accuracy. So this is very important, in particular against the Head of Mischief. The Head of Mischief tries to steal your buffs with every A1. And if it has enough accuracy, yeah, it's going to steal your buffs. Now, this isn't a buff-heavy team, but still, sometimes you have a few buffs up and you don't want them stolen. So when you decrease the accuracy of that Head of Mischief, that helps a lot with buffs not being stolen. And that decreased accuracy helps with the other heads as well. So the Head of Blight has a much lower chance of placing those poisons on you, and the Head of Wrath has a much lower chance of placing that Provoke on your team. So Padma also steals buffs, really important against the Head of Wrath once it reaches its Vengeance state. That is, it has taken 15 ticks of damage and it gets its Vengeance buff. Alongside that Vengeance buff, it gets other buffs as well. Now the Vengeance buff itself cannot be removed, but those other buffs can. So really nice to strip, steal, remove those buffs when the Head of Wrath reaches that Vengeance state. So here Shamail is on the team, as you guys know, for turn meter boosting the leader. So we're going to target the Head of Torment as much as possible. When we do that, it's going to turn meter boost the leader because it's trying to put fears on people, and Shamail is removing those fears and turn meter boosting the leader. So we're going to keep that cycle going as much as we can. So the best runs you're going to get are going to be when that Head of Torment keeps on reappearing or reappears a lot. Next up, we got a rare here, Abyssal for block buffs. He has an AoE block buffs on his A1. Really nice. Once you get the Mastery Sniper, you have a 35% chance to put that block buffs up. Really, really nice, in particular against that Head of Mischief. So it stops the Head of Mischief itself if it has a block buffs debuff on it from stealing your buffs. It will still remove your buffs, but it won't steal them. But if the Head of Mischief doesn't have that block buffs debuff, but everyone else does, even if it steals your buffs, it cannot spread them. So really, that block buffs is a counter for that Head of Mischief. Abyssal's AoE heal is pretty nice as well. So we're going to go through the first few minutes of a run so you see how everything works. Now this is a manual run, but after we go through that run, I'm going to show you everyone's gear stats and masteries. Now this isn't anything like a speed tune team or anything like that, so your champs can go in a different order than mine. That's completely fine. But I usually start off with Padma's A2, that is that AoE decreased accuracy. So hopefully I landed on most, if not everybody. Two out of 4 is okay. Next up is Geo, and you're going to place that HP burn. Now you can place it on anybody, even a bad affinity, because once again, he just places that burn. He doesn't hit with it, so he can't weak hit. So usually, I just place it on the Head of Wrath. So I got an extra turn here. I'm going to save his A2 for when I need to remove some buffs, in particular the Head of Wrath. But I can use his A1, and his A1 has that strong version decreased accuracy, which I definitely want to land. But here's a weird thing. I've noticed that even though it's an AoE for Geo, when I use his A1 against the Head of Torment, that is a bad affinity, and I land a weak hit, I will not spread that decreased accuracy to the rest of the heads. So it seems like if you get a weak hit from who you target, even though it's an AoE, you're not going to spread those debuffs. So I'm going to choose another head. Now, do I still want to hit that Head of Torment? Yes, because it's going to proc Shamail and then proc Turn Meter on my Geo. But I also want to land that debuff as well. I want to land that decreased accuracy on as many people as possible. So I'm going to target somebody else, and then they're going to hit that Head of Torment, proc that turn meter, plus I get a chance to land that A1 decreased accuracy, where if I hit a bad affinity and got a weak hit, I would not land that on anybody. At least that's what I've noticed. So I got a third extra turn for Geo. This is why Relentless is so good for him. So same thing as I said before, I'm going to target what's not a bad affinity, so hopefully I can spread that A1 decrease accuracy. But I'm still going to hit the Head of Torment because it's AoE and get some turn meter from it. Now all the heads have decreased accuracy. Finally, it's time for Geo 2. So burn anybody you want except that Head of Torment. We want the Head of Torment to last as long as possible, but even though it's a bad affinity, as I mentioned, you can target it if you want. But I'm going to go with the Head of Mischief right now. And now because of Shmail's turn meter boost, we're back to Geo 1 already. So we had 3 turns of Geo 1, 1 turn of Geo 2, back to Geo 1. So same thing we're going to do. We're going to use that burn, and lastly here, burn this last hit up. So for Abyssal here, same thing as I mentioned with Geo and his AoE A1. Abyssal has a block buffs on his A1, but if I click on a bad affinity, get a weak hit, even though the other hits against the other heads might not be weak hits, I will not spread that debuff, it seems like. So same thing as with Geo, I'm going to try to target any affinity that is not a bad affinity. So here, just going to go for the Head of Mischief. So got 2 block buffs up. So most importantly, we got that block buffs up against that Head of Mischief. So he cannot steal buffs, he can only remove them. Next up, we got Shmail. We're just going to target that Head of Torment with the A1. Look at all that reflected damage. We're still saving Geo's A2 here when we need it, but we are going to use that A1 again. Once again, target anybody who's not a bad affinity. Big damage numbers. Next up, guys, we got Pavement, and we're going to use her AoE decrease attack from her A1. Now her A1 hits, but it only hits the person you target. And from there, it spreads, that is, it places that decreased attack on the rest of the heads. So only one head takes damage. So because of that, we're going to target the Head of Torment to proc Shmail. Usually for Syl, I just target the Head of Torment with her A1, but if somebody happens to get swallowed by one of the heads, then I will use her A1 against that head to try to land that decreased speed on them, so I have a longer time to hopefully get that person regurgitated back out. But here we're just going A1 against the Head of Torment, proc some more turn meter for Geo. Next up is Geo. So there are no buffs that we can remove with this A2 right now. They're all protected buffs. So we're just going to go with the A1 again. Once again, not targeting that bad affinity. Second Geo, same thing. Did you guys see how many of those poisons got resisted? You see how powerful that decreased accuracy is. Now here, Abyssal is going to come in clutch with a heal from his A2. So the burn is back up for Geo, so we're going to target whoever's burns are about to expire besides that Head of Torment. We do not want to burn the Head of Torment. We want the Head of Torment to last as long as possible. So here, the Head of Blight looks like it's about to expire. That is that HP burn, so we're going to reapply it. Look at that resist for the Head of Mischief trying to steal Syl's buff. Decreased accuracy is great against this particular rotation. Next up is Pavement. There are no buffs to steal, so we're going to target that Head of Torment with the A1. So because that Head of Torment had that poison cloud up and did not have HP burns on it, because we didn't put it on him on purpose, we could not transfer that decreased attack debuff through the Head of Torment to the rest of the heads. That is why, despite the use of payment under A1, that decreased attack is not landing yet. So now, when we target the Head of Torment, because that Poison Cloud has expired, we can put that decreased attack to the rest of the heads. Next up, still A1, Head of Torment. A1 from Geo, not on a bad affinity. And extra turn, and we can apply the burns again. So whose burns are about to expire? The Head of Mischief. So the Head of Mischief is going to get another burn. And it's dead. So as you guys saw there, that burn placed by Geo on the Head of Mischief cannot be redirected because it's not an attack. It doesn't do damage. So the Head of Mischief has no choice but to take on that HP burn and get decapitated. Geo 2 with his A1. A1 from Abyssal to land that block buffs debuff. At this point, I think you guys probably get the gist of how I fight the Hydra with this team. So as we've seen, you can get really good damage with Geo, and I was only using 3 of the 5 Geo maximizing techniques that I mentioned. Alright guys, on to everyone's gear stats and masteries, and we'll start off with Seal of the Drakes here. The only legendary on the team, but a free legendary. Just log in and you get her. So here, I have her in a Relentless set and an Immortal set. Onto her total stats. So here I have her at 71,000 health. I have the attack at 1,700, defense at 3,000, speed 177, crit rate 38%, crit damage 148%, resist at 222, and accuracy at 259. Onto her masteries. So down the offense tree, I do have War Master on her to get bonus damage based off enemy max HP. Now down the support tree, these 3 right here, these on the left side of the support tree increase her passive healing, which is really good. Plus here on the bottom we have Spirit Haste, so if anyone dies, she gets a speed boost. Hopefully can revive them faster. And lastly, Sniper. This is for her A1, decreased speed. Occasionally, you're going to need that, especially if someone gets swallowed up by one of the Hydra heads. You're going to want to put decreased speed on them to increase the time you have to get that person back out. Next up is Shamail. I have him in a Toxic set and an Immortal set. So for this team strategy and this rotation of the Hydra, I don't think a high damage Shamail is the best choice. And it's not like this is the highest damage Shamail, but I don't think you need a Toxic set. I think a low damage Shamail would probably be the best choice for this rotation and for this team composition. So you could run 3 Immortal sets on him for some sort of sustainability, or you can run a regeneration plus Immortal set, something like that. A very low crit rate, very low crit damage. So I think a low damage, high sustain Shamail is the best for this rotation. Onto his total stats. So I have him at 49,000 health. I have the attack at 3,500, but as I mentioned, probably best to reduce the amount of attack, that is, reduce his overall damage. Have his defense at 1,800, you can increase that for sustainability. Speed at 156, it's not super important how fast he is, since this passive just works all the time to boost turn meter for the leader. Crit rate 97%, but that's way too high, as low crit rate as possible. Crit damage similar, as low crit damage as possible. Resist 142 in accuracy. You can put some accuracy into Shamail for his A1 to remove buffs, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. Next up are the masteries, and they're not Hydra specific or completed, but what would I get? I would definitely go Deterrence here. So this would allow Shamail to boost even more turn meter of the leader, which is our Geo, right? Or our second Geo if the first one's out of the fight. So definitely I would pick up Deterrence here. Next up we got Padma. So how have I geared her? In a Stalwart set and a Perception set. Onto her total stats. I have her at 50,000 health, I have her attack at 1,700, I have her defense at 3,200, speed at 219, crit rate 93%, she needs to crit in order to land that A1 decrease attack. Crit damage 120%, resist 179, and accuracy 236. Onto our masteries. So down the offense tree, I do have War Master, so we're getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And down the support tree, I have Master Hexer, so we're potentially extending the duration of her debuffs, that decreased accuracy plus that decreased attack from 2 turns to potentially 3 turns. So very important for her. Next up is Geo. Since they're both geared the same, I'm just going to show you one. Here I have him in a Relentless and Immortal set. I really like this combination of Relentless and Immortal. So when Geo or whoever it is procs an extra turn, they're getting healed at the same time. Onto his total stats. So here I have him at 43,000 health. I have the attack at 2,400, the defense at 2,400, the speed at 199, crit rate 41%, crit damage 104%, resist 169, and accuracy 310. Onto his masteries. So down the offense tree, we do have War Master, so we're getting bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And here down the support tree, we have Sniper, so we're increasing the chances of landing that A1 strong version, decreased accuracy. And Master Hexer allows us to potentially extend our debuffs by 1 turn. Lastly, we have Abyssal here, and only one piece of gear on him is level 16, so I have him in triple immortal sets. Onto his total stats. So his HP I have at 49,000, his attack I have at 2,000, I have the defense at 2,300, I have the speed at 164, I have the crit rate 46%, crit damage 103%, I have the resist 149, and I have the accuracy at 308. Onto his masteries, and they are the same as the Geos. So here I have War Master, so bonus damage based off enemy max HP. And here with Sniper, I am increasing the chances of him landing that A1 block buffs debuff. And Master Hexer here, I could potentially extend that debuff from 2 turns to 3 turns. Alright guys, that is it for today. I hope this video helps you out, and if you like using Geo against the Hydra, I hope I've given you some strategies that maybe you haven't thought about before. Do I regret 6-starring 2 Geos? No, Geo is bae. But you don't have to 6-star 2 Geos to get big damage out of him. That is it guys. If you haven't yet, like, subscribe, and share. Turn on all notifications. Stay safe, and I will see you guys in the next video.